In the United States, for every 100 people, there are 120 registered guns. For the same 100 people in the UK, there are approximately 3 guns registered. Today we're talking about the difference between guns in the US versus the UK. Let's get right into it. So this video is not a video about statistics, right? I think people take statistics and they do whatever they want to support their own side. And I think that's true with all issues, but with gun-related issues, for some reason, it seems more prevalent than almost any other issue I've ever seen. So for instance, I'm just going to give you a couple statistics, a way that you could support your case in either way. There is this statistic or this study that was done that shows that if you buy a handgun legally for any reason, then you have a long-lasting higher risk of death via a violent nature for the rest of your life. It's crazy that if you buy a handgun, even legally for any reason, you're more likely to die a violent death at some point in your life. That association is just there. Now, contrary to that, in any given US state, when there are restrictions to handgun ownership, any kind of background checking or additional restrictions or whatever, then an association with that is actually higher murder rates via handguns. It's contrary. You wouldn't think that would be true, especially given the last stat that we just read, but you could take either one of those stats and you could say, well, therefore, you should never own a handgun, or for therefore, everyone should own a handgun, or therefore, we shouldn't restrict handguns, or we should, or you can just take stats and do what you want to with them. So this video is going to be looking at perspectives. Not specifically, these are the statistics that show that this belief is right, or this one, or the pros and cons of different gun control methods, or anything like that. But instead, we're going to be looking at generally the belief systems of the UK regarding gun control and the belief systems of the United States regarding gun control. Again, very generally, because there are so many different prevalent beliefs surrounding both of these things. First, I want to start by presenting what I found very often in the United Kingdom, especially in England, regarding people's beliefs about guns. And I think especially people's beliefs about guns in the United States, this is just in general, this is their thought process. And I think it's a good thought process. I think it makes sense. Here it is. Guns in general, they really have one purpose. Throughout all of history, they've had one specific purpose, and that is to take life. Specifically, when you look throughout history, guns were designed to take human life. And that's okay. That's just the nature of what they are. That's what they do. That was their design. They can be used for hunting, but that was not their traditional use throughout most of history. They were designed for militaristic use, and that's what most of them are used for even today. Now, that's not a good or a bad thing, but that is a strong underlying belief that UK people look at a gun and they say, this is what it's designed for. That's what it's for. For many people, when they look at the United States and they look at what's happening with the prevalency of guns and how many there are and how easy they are to get, it seems backwards. For a lot of people in the UK, it's like, hey, we're trying to move our world away from this violence, away from this thought of like, hey, here's a weapon that is designed to kill. And in the United States, it seems like this weapon that's primarily designed to kill is a huge part of your culture. And that seems weird. It seems kind of crazy to someone in the UK. Now, here, I just want to describe a situation that I think it seems especially crazy to someone in the UK, because this is just not how it works there at all. This is a real story. This actually happened to me. I did the most Texas thing possible while I was living in Texas, which is I traded a pickup truck for a weapon and some money. So I was trying to sell this pickup truck. Someone contacted me on Craigslist, which is like Facebook Marketplace, and they're like, hey, would you be willing to trade? I have this weapon. I have this firearm. It's a revolver, and I've got some money as well. Would you be willing to kind of trade and trying to get rid of this weapon? Of course, that raises some red flags for me, so I do a search on the serial number and those types of things. But there is no legal requirement for me to do any paperwork. There was no, things may be different than they used to be, but at the time there were no need for paperwork. There was no registration. There was nothing. He could literally just hand me this weapon, and I could trade him. There was actually more paperwork for the truck than there was for the gun, right? And then several years later, kind of the same thing. I was like, well, I never used the weapon at all. I never fired it. I sold the weapon to someone else. And again, no paperwork was required, no registration. Again, I did run a background check, but there's no legal requirement for me to do that as I'm giving this weapon to some other person. As far as anyone in the government or anywhere ever knew, I never owned the weapon. In fact, I owned it for several years, but no one ever had any idea about that. If right now I decided that I wanted to go buy a weapon, I could make from here it's 10 minutes to the local Walmart, and I could pick up a rifle in about 15 minutes after that. And that seems crazy to someone in the UK. Now, part of it just seems crazy because it's kind of outdated to them. It's like this idea of why would you need to buy a weapon? Like, I guess if you're hunting or something, but why do you need 120 guns for every 100 people if you're just using it for hunting and most people aren't using it for hunting? The thing that makes this even crazier for someone in the UK, this perspective, is that every day, every week in the news, we hear about a new shooting, we hear about another massacre or school shooting or whatever else is going on. And it seems crazy that the prevalence and availability of guns is still so high in the United States. For someone in the UK, it feels like people in the States don't have any kind of sanctity of life because we're so willing to just continue buying guns. And that there's available, and there's no laws going into place to try and curb this. It just feels like cognitive dissonance, I think, to someone in the UK to say you're a forward nation, you're a first world country that doesn't seem to care at all for your people because you're so willing to let these guns just be everywhere. Now, for the US, there is a very different perspective coming forward. And again, I want to say that these perspectives are right or wrong. I'm just trying to present them so we can see the way that people think, and that can help us to understand each other better. For the United States, the gun argument most frequently is rooted in one of two places, and they're actually very closely connected. They're both tied to the Second Amendment. And for someone who is from another country, you may not understand how important the Constitution is to so many people. The Constitution is this document that happened in the midst of England, who people in the United States viewed as a tyrannical government. Now, actually, I think even people in England think that England was a tyrannical government for a long time. There's a sense of both pride and shame surrounding this idea that the sun never set on the English Empire. It was like, yeah, that was great that we were such a big nation, but there were also a lot of atrocities committed during that time in the name of England. And so the United States views England as a tyrannical government in the past. Now, of course, today it's totally different. I think even England has reformed their government to a place where we're best of friends in so many ways, no closer allies in the US and the UK. But there is a sense that back in the day, England was a tyrannical government and the United States was trying to separate ourselves from that. And the Constitution was specifically made to help protect us from a tyrannical government. The Bill of Rights are these rights that are granted to two different parties. One is to states, to individual states, and then also to individual people. And you see this in the First Amendment where it's like this right to speak and this right to not have to quarter troops. These are all these protections from a tyrannical government. And Second Amendment, in some ways, is the cornerstone of this idea for Americans, that we want to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government. And if we have weaponry, if we have the same weaponry that the government does, so for instance, if the federal government were to try to take over Texas, let's say, the state of Texas could quickly develop a militia based on the 12 gun or 120 guns per 100 people that are in Texas. It's probably higher in Texas than most states. And so therefore they could quickly develop a militia, and it would be, man, a horrible thing that would ever happen. So the federal government is never going to come into Texas and try and take over Texas. It would be dumb. It would be a horrible loss of life. But and so in some sense, because Texas has all these guns and all this availability of a militia, a standing militia could quickly be formed because of all these guns, Texas never has to worry about the federal government, a tyrannical government, coming and taking over Texas. At the base of our gun right issues in the United States, the first piece is that we want to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government. That's a belief system that's strong among many Americans. The second issue that is strong among many Americans, the second belief system that's strong, is that a well-armed populace actually helps keep crime rates down. There's a belief that people will be less likely to, say, come and do a school shooting or attempt a massacre in a place where they believe that much of the populace has a weapon on them. This belief system is most easily summarized with this as a concept. If you outlaw guns, the only people with guns will be outlaws. Now, it's easy when looking at these two perspectives of the United States or the United Kingdom, it's easy to see where those people are coming from. And then, of course, this baseline argument, this baseline belief system is what develops all of the other attacks and arguments and everything else. If you believe, for instance, that sanctity of life is one of the most important things from the UK perspective, then of course that's going to change the way that you look at all the statistics. That's going to change the way that you view the gun control argument. It's going to change everything about the way you view it. And generally in the United States, if you view the Second Amendment right as very, very important, then it's going to view the way you think of gun control. It's going to change the way that you view the government trying to restrict the way that Americans can access guns. I don't think this video is going to change anyone's mind one way or the other. I just don't think it is. I think people tend to be pretty set in their ways in this. Although I will say, in the United States, this belief has been shifting slowly over the last 50 years. I think it's going to continue to shift over the next 20, further from, honestly, the US belief system that guns are a Second Amendment right that should always be held, to a more UKian, I don't know, is that a phrase? No. A UKian idea that the sanctity of life is really important and we need to have more restriction of our guns. Whether that's good or bad is not for me to say, but it is something I think is interesting just to see that shift happening in our culture. Either way you believe, I think that that understanding the other side, understanding the other perspective more fully can give you a better idea of even your own arguments and why it is that you believe what you believe. The challenge here for you today, when you leave a comment, I want you to give me maybe your perspective. Tell me what you're thinking, tell me what you're feeling, what resonated well with you, and then I want you to let me know, what do you see from the other perspective that has value? What do you see from the other side that makes sense? I think this can be a really powerful exercise in just understanding people and developing perspectives that are helpful in life. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. We're putting out content surrounding the US and the UK, and if you enjoyed this, then I think you'll enjoy a lot of the other videos on our channel. Thanks a lot for watching, guys, and as always, see you next time.